Thank you for joining, Cleo.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course, we're happy to have you. I know we're going to hop right into it. I'm going to give a quick introduction about myself, and maybe you can do the same as well, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Okay.
Just so that everybody knows me, I'm Lydia Hailemariam. As Lydia was talking about earlier, I'm also the co-host for this event. So happy to have you guys here. And for the agenda for today, we have some great speakers, including Cleo. I am a marketeer by profession. For many years, I've been working in marketing, starting from customer to trade to shopper marketing for different companies such as Coca-Cola, different agencies, United Nations, Diageo, and most recently, I was exposed to a project, I would say, that worked in product, which is how I got into product management. I've been working in product for a few months now, and I love it. I think it's a great entry into tech, especially if you have a different background like myself, coming from marketing and trying to tap into tech. What I really enjoy about products is, frankly, seeing a product or bringing something to life from the ideation phase to the actual implementation. And that's what I've been able to do with some of the projects that I've led. And I'm excited for this conversation that's to come because I've worked a lot with designers in the past. So Cleo, take the stage away and let us know about your background and how you got into UX UI.
Okay, I sure will. So a little bit about my background. So been creating ever since I was a child. Basically winning awards and all that stuff. Was blessed enough to be creative, win awards and all that. You know, mom keeps the old thick photo albums back in the day full. So yeah, from there, I was blessed enough while I was in high school to actually attend a VOTEC school, which I think would be great for a lot of students. It would help them get a lot of direction and understand where they need to go before college. So where I went was Forbes Road East in Monroeville, which is like outside of Pittsburgh. So started off going there. Received actually my certification for commercial art and graphic design while I was still in high school. So I was actually employable from that point. So once I graduated high school, went off to PTI, which is now Pittsburgh Technical College. Went there, and basically the first day orientation, they said the hardest thing you'd be able to do in this job as a designer is get paid well, which was really true at that time. Very, very, very true at the time. They didn't really understand the value of us. But yeah, so ended up getting hired immediately while I was in college. And so that way everybody can kind of really relate here. I basically got called down to financial aid one day. And they said, graduate here, you're great, you help out with the students, you kind of knew what was going on coming in through the door. Fortunately, you know, you're not going to have any more money to finish school. And I didn't let that define me. I was like, okay, cool, right? So I just went about my business, you know, because I don't let that stuff kind of define me in life. I said, you know, that doesn't define me. I know who I am and I'm very capable. So the universe just kind of moved some things. And next thing you know, about 2 or 3 days later, I got a phone call from a friend that I went to school with. And they said, hey, somebody started a new business called GW Consulting down in Florida. You want a job? And that kind of kickstarted my career. I basically stepped out on faith. Left Pittsburgh. They said you're going to leave in 90 days, and it came from 90 days, and you have to leave next week.
Wow.
So left there, and things were very loose at the time, not as well defined for designers. So day one coming in through the door, I basically had to become a unicorn. I was managing the account. I was doing design. I was actually doing a lot of Flash and interactive design, doing a lot of PHP development, front end and back end development. Helping out with sales, managing a project, testing it out, you name it, from day one. So that kind of basically defined my career from that point on, to help me understand how important it is to understand what everybody's jobs are around me and being able to do that to help myself be better, but move things along faster.
That's awesome. That's a great path. I think everybody has a different journey, and that's the beauty of it. Especially, you know, when you come to this different role that we have now, and it progresses differently as well. So can you tell us a little bit about where you are currently and what kind of projects you cover as well in your current roles?
So currently right now, I'm with a really great small team. Like we are like a militia, right? So really great team, really great company. Full-time, I work with a company called 9Labs under the leadership of Jay Cornelius. We work with some major airlines, making some major changes there, basically doing some product validation, making sure that we are creating products with purpose, right? So, because time is all we have, right? So making sure that we're creating products as purpose, and because time is all we have, but time equates to money, right? They say time is money in business. So we want to make sure that we're not wasting anybody's time and money. So we make sure that we do the valid research that says, okay, you as a business, as a CEO, you are saying, let's make sure that that actually aligns with your users and what they're thinking. So we like to gauge with the stakeholders as far as like what they're thinking, make sure that aligns up with the business requirements, aligns with what the users' needs are, and just create a beautiful experience that is just delightful and scalable. So that's kind of where I am right now, is like I said, at 9Labs. On the side, I basically do what I've always been doing for the past 17 plus years, is I'll have my full-time job, be a father and husband, but I constantly take on side work, and do projects from beginning to end myself, because I'm so adept at so many different things. So.
And that's the thing. That's the great thing about this kind of roles, right? You can be a freelance if you want to, and you can also have something on the side because, you know, transferable skills, that matters. So can you tell us a little bit about what's the difference or the relationship between UX and UI, and what does it stand for people who don't know it, or for people who do?
Okay, so I'll start off with what it is. So UX, which needs to always come first in line, right? Because you have to make sure you're creating a product with purpose, as I stated. So UX is actually the user's experience. So understanding what is their journey, what is their pain points, what is their daily lives like in those micro moments before they get to the product, what problems are they trying to solve when they get to the product, being able to shape and frame that to create, okay, here's the actual structure of what we need to create for the user, is basically UX. So understanding the user's needs and translating that, mirroring that with the business goals, and translating that into an actual interface that is testable via paper prototypes or clickable or some kind of means of interface. So UI, we'll just say UI is the pretty, right? So UI is user interface. UI is the stuff that you're tapping on your phones. You're like, oh, this is so easy and simple. It's just colors, right, and code. So that's basically UI. And the way that I would like to explain it to people in layman's terms is, imagine an assembly line when you're thinking about a vehicle, right? Think about an old school assembly line Ford, right? They start off with the research before they even put anything on the line, or if they put any screws, any bolts together. They say, okay, what is this vehicle for? Who's it for? It's a family. Okay, let's make this thing a minivan, for example, right? It's going to be a minivan. So what things are important to people right now in terms of minivan, in terms of travel? How can we capitalize on that to put that in this vehicle? Once they've done all that research, UX, then they say, okay, now let's actually start putting this thing together, maybe putting some concept cars together before we put some out that are on the line. So when that happens, the UX comes into place, and they say, let's start building. In our world, in tech, we say wireframes, right? But in the concept of vehicles, we'll say it's the frame of the vehicle, not the whole, everything else is just the skeleton. So as it's moving down the line of product design and product development, we're going to test it and make sure that things need to sit where they need to sit.
Yeah.
Once you get down the line, you say, okay, we need to make sure that this thing can actually be built. So we need to talk to our developers before we start doing design. So we can say, okay, this needs to be the kind of motor. This needs to be the kind of undershaft. It needs to handle this kind of oil, because the BAs, right? The business analysts said these are the actual requirements of this thing. Once that happened and moves on down the line, we said, okay, we have the framework. We know what kind of oil this thing is going to have. Let's move on to the designers. Designer says, all right, guys, let's put some pretty seats in here. We're going to put some leather seats in here. We're going to have some veneer wood going across. We're going to have some lights that's coming from the floors, because we used to watch Pimp My Ride, and we like put TVs and chandeliers and everything. So that's where the UI comes in. But UI comes in and says, okay, I need to take everything that comes and validate that and translate that into a delightful experience that is, one, scalable for the business, enjoyable to use, solves a purpose, and overall grows the business, right? So that's kind of like the overall goal, is to make sure that you're always meeting the need.
Exactly. And that's really at the core of every business, right? The user is who is, the icon, the hero, and we're all trying to make sure that we create a product that serves the hero. So
Absolutely.
with that being said, like in the background, there's several different teams that you work with, right? Like you mentioned, you worked with developers, you can work with researchers. Can you kind of go through the different teams that you work with and how you manage those relationships as well? Because it's not a one-man show, right?
Yeah. So traditionally going into, I'll speak like traditional thinking. So traditional thinking going into it is this is your job title. I'm gonna paint baby into a corner. You be just that thing, okay? So I would like to share with everybody. Go into whatever discipline you are. Go into be a specialist. There are gifts that will make room for you that you already have. So go into it as a specialist. But once you get in there, say, okay, while I'm helping build this product, the actual user experience for me is what goes into the product. So that's the energy of the team. Make sure that everybody's alignment, everybody understands this, because that energy is going to be translated into an actual product, whether we realize it or not internally as a team. So I like to focus a lot on the morale in the team, and like to focus and say, okay, I'm going to start at the top of that chain with the PM, because the PM is the one who's getting the business requirements from the CEO or the PE, the product executive, right? And a lot of the times they kind of struggle with the fact that, okay, I have to make these decisions, but sometimes the direction that's given to me is more tactical, meaning do something now, right, in the moment, house on fire, instead of strategic. So I like to sit side by side with a lot of PMs and the business before it even gets to design and says, okay, what are we building? Why are we building it? Why is it important to the business? Because I think that business thinking is really important as a designer. You really need to know that. You don't want to be a starving artist. And you don't want to be hindrance to anyone else. So I like to understand what the goals and objectives are from the PM and make sure that those are clear. So I have very engaging conversations with the PM back and forth. Also with the dev manager, whoever that person is. I like to make sure that when we converge in the beginning, they're in on the conversations, because they're going to be the builders of this thing. If the builders don't have confidence to build, then right? And if your plan gets to the builders and they say that the actual infrastructure or whatever we currently have in place for our dev environment doesn't support it, now you got to start over. So I always make sure that in the beginning that basically the ringable necks are in the room, right? So designated ringable necks is what they call them at CoStar, right? It was a really great process, because we knew going into every project, we would define exactly what needed to happen, what were the requirements are with the BAs, how can I give assets or deliverables to the developers for them to develop faster? How can I make sure that everybody's communicating this all the time? And how can I also, even as a designer, make sure that on my product design team, that we actually have a visual QA process in place? So that way we are the first and last lines of defense before it gets to developers. So QA is only testing functionality and not visual, because time is money and time is all we have, right? So, and making sure that things are very lightweight when you hand it off to the next person. It's almost like when I hand it to the next person, it's kind of almost done, and they're like, oh my gosh, is that easy? And that's how it should be. If you're not, I feel if you're not doing that with the person that's before or after you align in a team, you're just kind of collecting a check. You're not really solving a problem, and you're really being mindful of the fact that user experience isn't the actual user's experience as well using the product, but it's the people who's building it, more importantly.
Exactly. And frankly, when you're saying that, your passion comes out, and I can see it. I think when we have designers, there's really a distinct difference between a designer that wants to be involved from A to Z versus a designer that's just doing B, right? I've worked with both, and I love when a designer is asking good questions. They're strategic. They're seeing the bigger picture. They're not just building for now, but they're building for the whole purpose of where the user is going to see and what they're going to see and why they should see it. Because the other aspect of it is also, when you test something and there's a feedback that comes back, you want to make sure that when you reiterate, you're reiterating that product based on their feedback, and you understand why you're doing it, not just because you need to do it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more that goes into design. It's not just the pretty, to your point, that you see on a page, but there's a lot of thought process behind that. So with that being said, can you tell us a little bit about your design process and what kind of workflow that you have with your team to make
Mhm.
sure that all of those feedbacks and, inputs are being considered when you build or reiterate something?
So what I do is I basically kind of follow. I think Google Ventures has kind of called it like the design sprint, right? They've given an actual name to it. They've given a nomenclature to it, but I've always been doing it all along. Which is at the beginning, I figure if we're going to be a team, yes, we all have individual things we have to do, but we all have to cross the finish line together in order to deem it success, right?
Mhm.
So generally, what I do is, like I explained before, I make sure that first and foremost, the goal is clear, right? So if the PM is the masthead and the person who's leading the ship, and they're the captain, let's make sure that the captain's good, right? So it's like laws of power, right? Never outshine the master. So you make sure that the master is comfortable, you make sure that they're good, and you understand what needs to be done. So moving on down the line, like I said, I would get the requirements from the BAs, make sure that the devs are comfortable and confident in what they have to build, and QAs are focused on their testing. And to answer your question more as far as like my process and more the micro level, I keep it simple. Seriously, I keep it simple and I take it back to the basics. I make sure that I can touch it and then I can feel it. I want to make sure that the design feels real to me.
Yeah.
So I basically start off on paper and I tell everybody, I said, you don't have to be Picasso to get a concept out on paper. Like if you put it out on paper, you can make it tangible and it makes it real to you and it makes it real to everyone else in the room, right? So I would say be comfortable with getting your ideas out and making them clear. And when it comes to the actual principles of design, I just make sure it has a lot of crap. And what I mean by that, oh, you're gonna chuckle, I knew it. So what I mean by that is, so while I told you when I got my certification.
Yeah. On to the
There
next.
we go.
Yay, you're back.
Having fun with you guys. I was telling you about crap.
Exactly. That's why it just went away.
I know, right? It was like, we're gonna crap out on you, dude. Forget that. So crap, right? Keeping it simple. So my teacher, Miss Kathy Walker, I still follow her principles to the day, right? She said, make sure it's got a lot of crap, guys. And we would all chuckle. We're, teenagers. Ha, 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 ha. So I said, what does that stand for? She said, if you just keep to these, you're good to go, Cleo. She said, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. If you make sure that your design has a lot of crap, you're good to go. She said, not everybody's a designer, but everybody are creators, right? So that's when I kind of took from that point, was like, all right, we are all creators. We're creating things when we speak, when we're in ideation phase, we're actually creating things, right? So that's why I said in my process, I like to make it real. So I start off and make sure that I can touch it.
That's awesome. That's a great way to think about it. So one thing that everybody can take away is that word crap.
Contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Just
Exactly.
keep
I
it
love
simple. So
I love it. I love it. It's great. So we're about to just go ahead and go to the Q&A section of our session now. So Derek is asking, what platforms and or program languages are good to know or learn for UX UI design?
for UX UI design, tell you again, keep it simple. So start with the base languages that kind of started it all, right? Like start with the HTML, start with the basic JavaScript, learn some vanilla basic JavaScript, because there's some things you can do in vanilla basic JavaScript that can help you out when you learn jQuery. So jQuery is one of those kind of frameworks or languages where it's like it does a lot of things for you for the showing and hiding, right? Or I want to toggle a class on something. And you can use things like, I'm just going to show and hide a class. Because the way that CSS has evolved now, you can just use show and hide a class, and CSS will handle things in the back. It will handle your fading and the transitioning of colors and the transforming of the shapes of things. So I would say start with your basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and go out there and start inspecting people's sites. Go to Chrome, do the right click, inspect, and start playing with the actual CSS that's on the side, because you're not disrupting anything, but you'll get to see in real time what happens when I add certain things in CSS or with certain properties, or what happens when I play with these certain colors. And you don't have to have any programs at all. You could be a mom that just does crafts and do that.
Yep. Okay, that's great. That's a good start. So Ashley is asking, do you have any tips for creating my first portfolio? I have a non-formal UX work experience. I've been taking some courses online.
So I would say for your work portfolio, I would say go out there and play the game monkey see, monkey do, right? Like life is not a race. You're not gonna like. Don't worry about being first, right? Like just worry about finishing, and know first of all that you are very capable, right? You have all that you need. So just be confident knowing that you have all that you need.
Yeah.
But I would say for your portfolio, go out there and look on LinkedIn and see what a lot of the employers are actually asking for, because a lot of things that the big employers are asking for are things that are going on now in terms of user research, and also things that are going to be going on later in terms of research, meaning in the context of COVID and what's going on now, right? So because UX research is going to play a huge part, like a huge part in our futures from here going on forth, even more so. And I think U.S. researchers are going to be put on a pedestal, and should be, actually, because their research extends beyond just the product knowledge, but also all the way to the customers and the users, which can actually affect the overall business decisions that a CEO should be making. So I would say, if you have a really talented UX person like yourself, like you're going to be, then CEOs need to really tap into you and use you to the best of their abilities.
Okay, great. That's a good answer. Julius is asking, could you go more into detail about alignment and proximity?
Yes. So with the alignment and proximity, how can I say? All right. So the alignment of objects. I may have two things that are within a given space. Let me see if I grab some paper here, because I'm a paper person. So if you have two things that are within a given space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like when you have two things that are within a given space, right? You can have this element, which is a title, right? And this element, which is a photo, right? Now, this title and this photo, these elements here, even though this text here may be justify left or whatever, I want to keep it aligned with the top of that image, right? And I want to make sure that whatever spacing I have here between this image and between the text and the title that's at the top is all equal, right? So that's what I mean by proximity. Alignment is like how things are aligned horizontally and vertically, or even at different angles on the screen, depending on what you're trying to capture from the design and what mood you're trying to capture. So I would say that's basically how I would answer that question. Is like alignment is literally how things are lined up. If you were to put a ruler up against it, proximity or how far, how close certain things are in terms of the objects that are living within that space and why are they there and what is its purpose.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's a great way to describe it. Actually, you wrote it. You actually designed it in 2 seconds. Somebody was asking about Oracle SQL, and somebody also said that's more for database management manipulation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's definitely more for database. I myself, for the course of my career, has been able to like host people's sites and things of that nature, and take on like actually pay for a VPS hosting service. So I'll say anybody out there that could afford one, that you are a designer, like get a VPS hosting instead of shared, because you can start to get more of a feeling like my data, just using the WordPress database, right? You get to understand like the structure of data and objects and how they are, and actually just how to manage some of those things. You can understand some of the pain points of developers, or even somebody just managing the server to make sure it stays up sometimes. So I would say, yeah, dabble a little bit. Don't be afraid. You have nothing to lose.
Do you have any favorite software or a tool that you use that you go to? What's your go-to?
I would say my favorite go-to is my calendar. Because my calendar, because to me, time is all we have, and time and energy is the only thing you're ever managing in any conversation or relationship with anyone, right? Like right now I'm managing your energy, right? And I'm managing the time that we're spending with each other, right? So my favorite app is my calendar. I live and die by it, because I use it to also discipline myself to basically know to say no, right? So I say basically, if I visually can't see that it can't fit in my day, that allows me to say no and be comfortable with that. Right. So I actually have my family. I have 4 children and my wife. Right. We all actually have a shared calendar. I even see my work calendar because they know I work from home and I do some things. So we all share each other's time, share each other's calendars, and also make sure that each other is very mindful of what we're doing with our time. So calendar.
Awesome. I would have never predicted that, by the way. What are some transferable skills that you would recommend for somebody that's getting into design or that want to get into design?
I'll give you 2, right? So the one was a real world case when I was working in Info Tycoon. We had a certain individual that came in, and she actually came from fashion design, right? So she came from fashion. She was like, look, I'm coming into this thing. I want to do UX and I want to do UI. I'm not really sure, right? But she felt more comfortable starting in UX because she said, I don't really know the design tools that well.
Okay.
So what I did was, I would say, I just basically make sure that it was relative to her. I said, what is your current job now? Right? You need to find somebody that is in this field right now, no matter if you are a chef, a garbage man, a stay-at-home mom, or whatever. Trust me, your gifts will make room for you. There are certain skills that you have already that actually translate over well, and you would never think about it. Like never think about it. It'll blow your mind. But I would say get with somebody like myself or someone else that has been out there for a while, and that is good at simplifying things, and say, hey, here's what I do. Okay, well, tell me exactly what you do, because I'm going to find out. I want to know exactly what is your current job. And I'm going to say, oh, well, in our world, that's just that.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you make things relative to a person, they feel like they can relate to it. It's more stick-to-itiveness, right? So they're like, oh, there's confidence there. Oh, I can do this. And that's all I've been doing my whole career. I've been teaching designers how to design. I've been teaching people that don't know anything about design. I've even taught people HTML in 10 minutes by using a newspaper. Without using like I told you yesterday, right? Like they were able to gain the concept, like, oh, that's it. And I was like, yeah. So now take this picture here or this magazine here, and I'll tell you go build that. Monkey see, monkey do, right? Somebody's already done it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go do it. Just go monkey see, monkey do. Take something that's already created and try to recreate it by yourself as close as you can.
That's a good way to answer it. I think it's always about being curious and wanting to learn, right? It's always about that. So we're about to wrap up with this session, guys. So before we end the session, there's one question that we would like you to answer. Yeah. So what's your final advice, or what's your, go-to line that you would give for somebody that's getting into this? As you know, for Product South, our line is PS You Can. It's just inviting people and just letting them know they can as well get into it. So what would be your advice?
My advice would be, I'm going to take a drink of water for effect, if you don't mind.
It's going to be deep. I can see it.
Here it comes. I'm just kidding. I would basically tell whoever's trying to get into this field, like I said, I'm very passionate about teaching someone how to fish. That way, and also teaching them why we're fishing and where we're fishing. And so that I like to empower people. Yeah. I've always been that way. So I will say, make sure that you connect yourself to people that are, because birds of a feather flock together, right? Find people in this field, find people that are doing that things that you want to do. Reach out to them. Tell them about your vision and your passion to do this. There are people that are very empathetic to your plight and will say, oh yeah, here, you want water, I will lead you to the water. Like, don't be afraid to ask. You have nothing to lose but time, and you don't want to get to the end of this road and just say, you basically want to get to the end of this road and here it is, all your dreams die with you.
Awesome.
Basically. So live for the day, go hard. If you want to be able to create. If you want to design. If you want to develop. If you want to be the badass PM that's out there, then do it and be the badass PM and lead people and create great products.
That's awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. I think you have given an idea of, what UX UI is and a bit about experience. So if people want to reach out to you, how can they get to you? What's your Twitter, Instagram, name it?
So I have a little bit of everything, right? So you can actually reach me. I'll keep it really simple. You can reach me at hello@cleohenderson.com, right? So if you want to reach me there, you can reach me there, or you can reach me at my business email. They both go to the same bucket, right? We're all in technology. And that's hello@AndThereWas, like and there was light. So hello@AndThereWas or hello@cleohenderson.com. And I promise you, I will be right there to answer your questions. I'm not somebody who charges you every minute. I just want to help people solve problems, but first make sure there's a problem to solve. So that's awesome. How we do it.
We'll definitely have that in the chat as well for you guys. Thank you, Ashley, for asking that question. So again, thank you so much, Cleo, for your time. We appreciate having you. We'll definitely need to have you again, because I think there's more to talk about design in the future. And it's a great field to be in. And your knowledge and your expertise is much appreciated. So we'll have the next session come in.